Hello world, Double Thumbs here. The release of the new Sony A7c had me quite excited. After spending almost 2 years with my APS-C Sony A6400, I was finally ready to jump ship to full frame. I really was. I started looking at some cheap lenses like the Samyang 45mm f1.8 and the Sony 28mm f2. But at the initially rumored price of $2,100 and now the official price of $1,800, my search for the perfect entry-level full-frame camera continues. I was actually expecting a $1,000 Sony A5, but we got the $1,800 A7c instead. In my opinion, in my non-professional opinion, there are way too many more cameras that are competitive at similar or lower prices, A6400 being one of them. Let's go find out what these cameras are. So we'll start out by talking about some of the cameras that are much cheaper than the A7C at about $1,000, and I do think this was the price point that the A7C should have targeted. And the first one is the Canon RP, a full frame camera for $1,000. Obviously it's not the most feature packed full frame. The 4K has a 1.7 times crop and the autofocus isn't the best at 4K, but if you want that full frame look and 1080p is acceptable, then the RP is a very good camera for only $1,000, and it also gives you the option to move up into the RP or the R5 if you want to, because it's a power mount camera. And the second camera is the Panasonic G9 at about $1,000 with the micro four thirds sensor. It can do 4K 60 and can do the best stabilization known to man. So the stabilization of the G9 is really in a class of its own. It really eliminates the need for a gimbal as long as you're not doing any kind of professional work. And that's a huge plus, and I did consider this camera when I was getting my A6400, and I'm still considering it in 2020. The 4K 60, good for slow-mo, and it may not be the best at low light videos because of the micro four thirds sensor being a lot smaller than full frame. But with some f1.4 lenses, it will produce a much sharper and better low light videos compared to your smartphone. And the third camera is the Sony ZV-1. And the ZV-1 is that 1-inch pocketable YouTube cam, and it means that you'll carry it around everywhere, meaning you'll get more footage, which is the most important thing. Along with the G9, the ZV-1 is one of the cameras that I'm seriously considering even now. And the A7C is compact, but it's not a point and shoot camera like the ZV-1 is. So the ZV-1 has a very unique position of being a pocketable YouTube cam, and it is definitely good enough for YouTube videos as long as you're not doing any kind of professional work, which I'm not. Last but not least is the Sony A6400 at $900. It does have an APS-C sensor, which isn't as big as a full frame sensor, but the Sigma f1.4 lenses and the Sony 18-105 complete this package really nicely. And you're not really going to be able to afford full frame lenses that are f1.4 anyways, because they're all like $2,000, $4,000, $5,000, maybe except for the Sony 24mm f1.4, which is a little bit more affordable. And if you're just starting out on YouTube, you're probably not using your cameras professionally to make a living. It's cameras and video work is your hobby, not your bread maker. So you're probably not like Potato Jet, who uses his cameras for professional work to make money. So the Sony A6400 with Sigma f1.4 lenses is going to blow your mind. It's still blowing my mind after almost 2 years at how sharp it is and how good the quality of these videos are. The A7C's price of $1,800 is almost about the same price of getting the Sony A6400 with the Sigma 16mm f1.4 and the Sony 18-105. And that said, is all you need, and you can get that for about $1,900, which is the price of the Sony A7C. So for the price of a body, you can be done and start shooting. Okay, now moving on to some of the cameras that are in the same price range, that $1,800 to $2,000. And the first is that Sony A7 III. The A7 III is $2,000 right now, but is often at $1,800, and it's only gonna be cheaper when the A7 Mark IV comes out and with the A7C coming out. And just like the A7 M2, which is a lot cheaper than A7 Mark III, if the Mark III becomes $1,500 or $1,200, then it really becomes a serious contender, because I'd rather have the A7 Mark III with the Sony 28mm f2, which would be the same price as the body of the A7C. The only advantage that the A7C has is the chopped off eyepiece and the flip out screen. And to me, it's not a big negative, especially if you're using ultra wide angle lenses anyways. You're just gonna look at the lens and know that you're gonna be in the frame. And the other thing is that I prefer the flip up screen rather than the flip out screen. And I know I'm weird for preferring the flip up screen, but I think it looks more natural if you're looking up at the screen, because it's almost like you're looking at the lens rather than looking sideways, like I found out when I was playing with the ZV-1. And the second camera is the Fuji X-T4, and the X-T4 is like the G9 of the full frame world, and it can do 4K 60, and it does have better stabilization because it has IBIS and digital image stabilization. So for some people, more stable footage and 4K 60 is more usable, including myself. And the A7C does have this catalyst browse, the gyro stabilization that you do in post, but you do have to do it for every single video that you film after you film it. You have to go into your computer and make sure your computer does the thing. And it could be a bit tedious. I haven't done it myself, so I don't know how tedious it is, but it sounds like it's going to be tedious if you have to do it every single time with every single clip that you film. And it doesn't work with the image stabilization that's built into the body of the A7C. So the Fuji X-T4 is 4K 60, and the stabilization that just works without having to go to the computer is a big plus for me. And if I had to choose, I think I would probably get the X-T4 over the A7C, especially for the same price. And the third camera is the Nikon Z6, and about $2,000 again, often at $1,800. The biggest downfall is the XQD card and the no flip out or up screen. But more and more I look into this camera, it sounds like it's the better A7 Mark III, because it's got that digital image stabilization, and the stabilization tends to be better looking than the A7 Mark III. So I started looking into this camera, and I don't know too much about it yet, but it sounds like a strong candidate for someone who's looking at the full frame camera at about $1,800. So in conclusion, my search continues. I'm really satisfied with my A6400 and the image that comes out of it. And the only weakness of the A6400 is that stabilization, and the A7C's in-body stabilization doesn't seem to be a much better stabilization, at least when there's a lot of movement. And the gyro stabilization in post is an extra step that I'm not sure if I'm ready to take on yet. And the A7C, it's a great little camera. It's amazing how Sony was able to fit in that full frame sensor with in-body stabilization into an APS-C body. And the only problem is really the price. People are expecting a $1,000 A5, but it's almost twice that price. And it would be a perfect B camera for professionals who's looking to add to their A7S III, because they have all the lenses for the full frame system anyways. But for someone who's not a professional, just looking to make YouTube and home videos, the APS-C is still not dead. But what do you guys think? The A7C, is it a worthy camera, or is it well priced in your opinion? Would you get one? Let me know down below, and until next time.